Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction. I am already sharing my presentation. Hopefully it will work properly. So let me start my paper, which is on album 76. During the normalization of the 70s, culture in Czechoslovakia was operating under severe restrictions. It was subject to censorship, making personal creative freedom impossible. Without any support from the state, art was gradually forced to become self-organized. It created substitute channels of communication and search for alternative exhibition spaces outside galleries. The unofficial culture that developed in isolated reservations was based on mutual cooperation, personal meetings, studio visits, or postal correspondence, as we saw in the previous papers. These autonomous zones and islands of positive deviations realize thanks to the personal commitment of individuals and their willingness to take risks represents the basic framework of the Czechoslovak culture space of the period. Within this context, album 76 is an important example of the interrupted art activity. In the mid-70s, when independent culture was subject to even increasing suppression, the creation of portable exhibition was a logical alternative. Album 76 was conceived by Ivo Janoušek, technical engineer who had been interested in contemporary art since the late 60s. He and his friends had organized many independent cultural activities in Ostrava region, ranging from exhibition, lectures, and the publication of graphic prints to the compilation of three documentary albums. You can see the title sheets of three of them. The portable exhibition format fulfilled two important functions. For the participating artists, it was often the only possible means of addressing their latest works. Thanks to its transportability, it was an essential source of information for other people interested in contemporary art. Janoušek, along with his friends, drove in person from studio to studio, delivering the albums. Thus, the albums of more than 70 copies reach different parts of the Republic. The following map illustrates the extent of this unofficial network. You can see the legend, the blue lines and the red lines. It meant that news about contemporary art in Czechoslovakia was paradoxically more available to a greater number of people than a traditional gallery exhibition would have permitted in those days. Album 76, completed in 1976, which brought together an extensive set of original prints and several drawings, is the most important of the three albums. Of the 100 addressed artists, 65 sent their work, including 19 Slovak artists. Looking at the list of names, it's clear that this was a genuine cross-section of the current art production. The album was A2 in size and was bound in canvas covers. The result is not only a representative example of unofficial Czech art, but a contribution to the knowledge of Slovak art as well. It highlights Czech and Slovak networking, which was maintained mainly by personal contacts. On the other hand, Album 76 also reveals the specific character of the development of Czech and Slovak art. At the beginning of the 70s in Bohemia, Modernism, a movement which progressive artists consciously followed, regained its position as a silent tradition. In contrast, works of a conceptual character were already being created in Slovakia. It's clear that Album 76 reinforced Czech and Slovak contacts and had an impact on further joint activities. It's also interesting to note that in the same year, a similar album was created in Bratislava entitled Symposium 3 in Memoriam Miloš Laky. Janoušek claims it was inspired by Album 76, but there is no direct evidence. These were rather parallel activities that in both cases followed on logically from the previous events. For instance, Zuzana Bartošová, who examined the phenomenon of the albums, does not refer to any influence of Album 76 to Symposium 3, and does not even compare the two. Although both albums are formally close, its concept was different. Symposium was dedicated to the memory of one person, as is evident from the title itself. In other countries of the Eastern Bloc culture operate also under restricted conditions. Nevertheless, depending on the political, social, and cultural milieu, there were differences of degree as regards individual restrictions. The complicated complex of the cultural space of Eastern Europe in the 70s is clear from the presentation and reception of Album 76 at that time. In Czechoslovakia, album became synonymous with hostile activity. Not even the fact that one copy was donated to the National Gallery in Prague contributed to its rehabilitation. After the publication of Charter 77, the albumists, as they were called by the State Security Service, were even subject to prosecution. The investigators believed that the organizers of Album 76 were in direct contact with Charter 77, even though only two of the participating artists had signed this declaration. The unfounded report about the exhibition of Album 76 at the so-called Dissident Biennial in Venice in 1977 also contributed to this. It's still not clear who was behind this subversive foreign activity, and whether or not at least a selection of work from Album 76 was exhibited there. Despite the domestic repression on Album 76, in 1977 its only presentation abroad took place at the Prismat Gallery in Krakow, Poland. The exhibition surprisingly took the form of a traditional gallery display, as is clear from the following photographs. You can see the exhibition installation, some works, and also the opening. It was even accompanied by a catalogue with an introductory text by Ivo Janoušek. However, the circumstances surrounding the show capture the absurdity of the institutional condition of unofficial art in the 70s. This exhibition in Krakow, officially organized by the Polish Union of Visual Artists and under the patronage of the first secretary of the Polish Workers' Party, happened only thanks to the personal initiative of one of the participating artists, Dana Puchnarová. On her way to the International Painting Workshop in Poland, she picked up her copy of the album from Janoušek's home in Ostrava, which she then showed to members of the Polish Union in Krakow. It was her album that eventually served as the exhibit, which she took home again after the end of the exhibition. A similar model involving cooperation between art scenes was very common during the normalization. In the same year, albumists arranged for two more exhibitions abroad, in East Berlin and Budapest. I suppose that both were initiated thanks to personal visits by Czech and Slovak artists to Budapest, where Jürgen Schweinenbraden and his wife Barbara von Wróblewski from East Berlin also traveled regularly. Since 1974, he had been running a unique private gallery in a Berlin apartment in Prenzlauer Berg. Josef Jankovic and Dora Mauer were the main organizers of the Hungarian exhibition, which was to have taken place at the Hatvany Lajos Museum. Both later recalled how the exhibition was cancelled following events surrounding Charter 77 and the Dissident Biennial due to pressure being applied by the Czechoslovak embassy in Budapest. The exhibition at Jürgen Schweinenbraden's gallery in East Berlin never took place for the same reasons. However, we can speak of the Hungarian one as having been postponed rather than cancelled, since it was finally held in 1990 at the Czech Cultural Center in Budapest. This is another manuscript of the text for Hungary. The original set of graphics prints was put on display along with other works by selected artists, and the opening was overseen by no less than Ivo Janoušek. Another interesting fact is that the first exhibition of Album 76 only took place in the Czech Republic as late as 2017 at the Gallery of Fine Art in Ostrava. This is the show in Ostrava. As an alternative exhibition platform, Album 76 also offers comparison with the turn in art of the 60s and 70s, which in the West was manifested, among other things, in the institutional critique. We might see a parallel to Album 76 in the project of American curator Seth Siegelow, who as far back as 1968 organized the group show in the form of a book entitled Xerox Book. This is it, which featured works by 7 conceptual artists created through xerocopy. In another of his projects, January 5-31, 1969, the physical installation was merely a fragment, and the exhibition as a complex work existed only as a catalogue. The use of the book format as a literal and physical space for an exhibition corresponded to the Western conceptualization of art at that time. In the case of the Album 76, however, it was not about the transformation of the art itself or its installation methods. The described local social and political context played a decisive role in its creation. It's clear, therefore, that notwithstanding the apparent formal similarity and proximity in time, there are differences in meaning. Comparing art from different geographical contexts is therefore always problematic. In conclusion, Album 76 as a portable exhibition platform remains a very specific example of the alternative institutionalization that the Eastern Bloc art created for itself at that time. It reveals the range of networking taking place both within and without the region of Czechoslovakia during the normalization period of the 1970s. Thank you very much for your attention.